They all celebrated when my sister got arrested for the third time, but when I graduated valedictorian, nobody even looked up from their phones. My name is Willa Hartley, and for 28 years, I lived as the family ghost. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and everyone keeps talking like you're not there? That was my entire childhood. My parents, Margaret and Charles, weren't cruel people. They just had this way of measuring love through crisis. The louder you screamed, the more attention you got. My sister, Serena? She was a master at this game. When Serena failed her driving test 4 times, my parents hired a private instructor and threw a party when she finally passed. When I got my license on the first try at 16, my dad handed me the keys and said, "Good. Now you can drive yourself to school." When Serena dropped out of college sophomore year because she was finding herself, my parents spent thousands on therapy and life coaching. When I earned a full scholarship to engineering school, my mom said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to planning Serena's birthday party. The pattern was always the same. Serena's chaos demanded immediate family meetings, emergency phone calls, and financial bailouts. My achievements got polite smiles and subject changes. I remember the exact moment I realized how invisible I was. Christmas dinner, 2019. I had just landed my first real job at a tech startup in North Carolina. I was so excited to share the news. "Mom, Dad, I got the position. They're offering me $65,000 to start plus benefits." My mother was cutting turkey. She didn't even pause. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Serena, tell everyone about your new apartment." And just like that, the conversation shifted to Serena's studio apartment that my parents were co-signing for. Again. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, watching my family hang on every word about Serena's artistic journey, while my career milestone evaporated into background noise. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I made a decision that would change everything. I was moving to North Carolina, and I wasn't coming back. But I had no idea that leaving would eventually force my family to show their true colors in the most shocking way possible. Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own family? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. And if you're ready to see how this family betrayal gets even worse, hit that subscribe button because what happens next will blow your mind. Moving to North Carolina felt like stepping into someone else's life. Someone who actually mattered. My parents' reaction to my big move? My dad said, "Don't let work make you forget about family." My mom asked if I'd still come home for Christmas. That was it. No, "We're proud of you," or "We'll miss you." Just concern about holiday logistics. Meanwhile, when Serena moved 3 blocks away to her new apartment, they threw her a going-away dinner and cried actual tears. I packed my Honda Civic with everything I owned and drove 8 hours to start over. No fanfare, no family send-off, just me, my determination, and a playlist full of angry breakup songs that somehow felt perfect. The tech company was small, but growing fast. I wasn't chasing some glamorous Silicon Valley dream. I just wanted to prove I could build something on my own terms. While my coworkers went out for happy hour, I stayed late learning new systems. While they took long lunch breaks, I volunteered for extra projects. I wasn't trying to be a workaholic. I was trying to be undeniable. 18 months in, I got my first promotion, then another. My manager started including me in strategy meetings. Clients requested me specifically for their projects. For the first time in my life, people noticed when I walked into a room. The breakthrough came during my 3rd year. Our biggest client was threatening to leave because their previous project manager had botched their software launch. My boss pulled me aside. "Willa, I need someone who can fix this mess and keep them happy. It's a lot of pressure, but if you pull this off, there's a senior role opening up." I worked 16-hour days for 2 months. I rebuilt their entire system architecture, trained their staff personally, and delivered the project 3 weeks early. The client was so impressed they signed a 3-year extension worth $500,000. That's when everything changed. The promotion came with a $40,000 raise, a relocation package, and something I'd never had before: respect. I called my parents to share the news. My mom said, That's great, honey. Your father's business is struggling, and Serena's having trouble with her landlord. Can you help out?" Even my biggest professional victory somehow became about everyone else's problems. But this time, instead of feeling hurt, I felt something different: clarity. I was done being the family's afterthought. The day I got the keys to my condo, I sat in my car and cried for 20 minutes, not from sadness, but from pure relief. This wasn't just any apartment. This was a corner unit on the 15th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charlotte skyline. Modern kitchen with granite countertops, hardwood floors throughout, and a balcony where I could watch the sunrise with my coffee. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was completely mine. No family photos I didn't choose, no furniture that came with guilt trips attached, no walking on eggshells around someone else's drama. I spent my first weekend there just sitting on the floor, eating takeout Chinese food and planning where everything would go. I bought plants, lots of them. I hung artwork that made me smile. I set up a home office where I could work in peace. 3 months later, I made the best decision of my adult life. I adopted Jasper, a 2-year-old golden retriever from the local shelter. The moment I saw him, tail wagging despite being abandoned by his previous family, I knew we belonged together. Jasper became my shadow, my running partner, my excuse to explore every dog park in the city. He didn't care about my family's dysfunction or my workaholic tendencies. He just loved me unconditionally, something I had forgotten was possible. My new life had a rhythm: morning runs with Jasper, productive days at work, evenings cooking dinner while he napped on his favorite rug. Weekends meant farmers markets, hiking trails, and slowly building friendships with neighbors who actually seemed to enjoy my company. I was proud of what I'd built. So proud that I decided to share it with my family. I took photos of my living room, the afternoon light streaming through those big windows. Jasper stretched out peacefully, my bookshelf filled with novels I'd finally had time to read. I posted them in our family group chat with a simple message: "Home sweet home." I waited for their response, and waited, and waited. My dad never replied. My mom left it on read. Serena sent a single thumbs-up emoji 3 days later. That silence told me everything I needed to know about how my family really felt about my success. But I had no idea that silence was about to get very, very expensive. While I was building my dream life in Charlotte, my family was falling apart back home, and nobody thought to tell me. For 8 months, my phone stayed quiet. No "how are you doing" texts. No random calls just to check in. No invitations to family dinners or holiday planning discussions. I'd gone from being the invisible daughter to being the non-existent one. At first, it stung. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to call my mom, then remembering how our last conversation ended with her asking for money before even asking how I was doing. I'd see other people posting family photos on social media and feel that familiar ache of being left out. But slowly, something shifted. The silence that once felt like rejection started feeling like freedom. I joined a book club. I started taking weekend trips to the mountains. I learned to cook Thai food and hosted dinner parties for my coworkers. I was becoming the person I'd always wanted to be: confident, social, genuinely happy. Meanwhile, 300 miles away, my family's world was crumbling. My dad's small construction business, which had been struggling for years, finally went under. The contracts dried up, the equipment got repossessed, and suddenly my parents were facing bankruptcy at 62 years old. Serena's situation was even worse. Her on-and-off boyfriend had left her with 2 kids under 5 and no child support. She'd been fired from her retail job for missing too many shifts, and was now completely dependent on my parents for everything: rent, groceries, childcare, you name it. My childhood home had become a pressure cooker. 3 adults, 2 toddlers, mounting bills, and no solutions in sight. The stress was eating my parents alive, and Serena's constant crises were draining what little energy they had left. But here's the thing that still makes my blood boil. Not once during those 8 months did anyone think to reach out to me. Not for emotional support, not for advice, not even just to let me know what was happening. In their minds, I was doing fine, so I didn't need them. And because I didn't need them, they didn't need to include me. That logic was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. One innocent photo destroyed my family's carefully constructed narrative about my life and exposed their greed in the most shocking way. My cousin Dahlia had always been different from the rest of my family. She actually listened when I talked and celebrated my wins without making them about someone else. When she came to visit Charlotte for a work conference, I was genuinely excited to show her around. We spent Saturday exploring the city, brunch at my favorite cafe, shopping in the arts district, and ending up back at my place for wine and catching up. Dahlia kept commenting on how peaceful my condo felt, how proud she was of what I'd accomplished, how different I seemed from the quiet, overlooked girl she remembered from family gatherings. "You're glowing, Willa," she said, curled up on my couch while Jasper dozed between us. "This place, this life, it's so you." Before she left Sunday morning, she asked if she could take a few photos. "I want to remember this," she said. "My cousin who built something beautiful all by herself." The photo she chose to post was perfect. Golden afternoon light streaming through my windows, Jasper sleeping peacefully on his favorite rug, my bookshelf and plants creating this cozy, successful woman vibe. Her caption was simple: "Proud of my cousin, she built this life all on her own." Within 6 hours, my phone started buzzing. The first notification was my mom liking the photo, then my dad, then several relatives I hadn't heard from in years. But it was the private message from my mother that made my stomach drop. "That's your condo?" I stared at those 4 words for a full minute. After 8 months of radio silence, this was how she chose to reconnect. Not, "How are you?" or "We miss you," or "Sorry, we've been out of touch." Just shock that I lived somewhere nice. "Yeah, why?" I typed back. "It's beautiful. I didn't realize it was that nice." There it was, the admission that cut deeper than any insult could have. My own mother had assumed I was struggling, living in some cramped apartment, barely getting by. The idea that I might be thriving had never crossed her mind. "Thanks, Mom." Then came the message that changed everything. "You know, your sister is in a tough spot right now. She and the kids have been staying with us. The house is cramped. Maybe you could sell that condo and help her out. You could always get another place later." I read it 3 times. Then I screenshot it and read it again. My mother, who hadn't spoken to me in 8 months, was suggesting I sell my home to bail out my sister. The home I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford. The sanctuary I'd built from nothing. The audacity was breathtaking. That text message shattered 28 years of conditioning in a single moment, and I finally saw my family for who they really were. I sat on my couch, phone trembling in my hands, reading my mother's words over and over. Maybe you could sell that condo and help her out. Like my home was just some disposable asset. Like my happiness was negotiable. For hours, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. Maybe she was just desperate and not thinking clearly. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew the truth. This was exactly who my family had always been. I'd just been too well trained to see it. The next morning, I called her back. My hands were shaking as I dialed. "Hi, sweetheart," she said like nothing had happened. "Did you think about what I mentioned?" Mom, I can't sell my condo. This is my home. The silence stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Willa, she finally said, her voice taking on that disappointed tone I knew so well. You have so much. Serena just needs a chance to get back on her feet. You're single, no kids. It would mean so much for the family. There it was, the logic that had ruled my entire childhood. My needs didn't matter because I didn't have enough problems. My success was somehow selfish because others were struggling. I worked for this, Mom. I earned it. We all work, honey. But family comes first. You know that. Family comes first. The phrase that had guilted me into silence for decades. But this time, instead of shrinking, I felt something I'd never allowed myself to feel before. Pure, justified anger. Where was family when I graduated? When I got promoted? When I moved here alone, and you didn't even call to see if I made it safely? Another long silence. You've changed, she said coldly. Success has made you hard. And there it was, the final manipulation. When guilt doesn't work, attack the person's character. Make them feel bad for having boundaries. What would you do if your own family asked you to sell your home to bail out your sibling? Comment below. I'm genuinely curious how you'd handle this. And if you want to see how much worse this family betrayal gets, hit that subscribe button because you won't believe what they try next. I hung up the phone and sat in my beautiful living room, surrounded by everything I'd built with my own hands, and realized something that should have been obvious years ago. My family didn't love me. They loved what I could do for them. The difference was about to become very, very expensive for all of us. 3 days after I refused to sell my home, my sister called with a number that made my jaw hit the floor and proved my family had completely lost their minds. Hey, Willa. Serena's voice was soft, almost humble. Mom said you're thinking about helping me out. I hadn't agreed to anything, but I let her continue. I've been doing some math, and I think I need about $39,000 to really get back on my feet. You know, first and last month's rent, security deposit, a reliable car, maybe some furniture for the kids. $39,000. She said it like she was asking to borrow $20 for gas. Serena, I never said I was helping you, and I definitely don't have that kind of money just sitting around. But you own that beautiful condo. You could get a home equity loan, or maybe refinance. She had actually researched ways for me to go into debt to fund her lifestyle. The planning behind this request was almost impressive in its selfishness. I'm not taking out loans to give you money. The sweet, humble tone vanished instantly. Seriously? You're going to let your own sister and her kids struggle while you live in luxury? Mom was right. You have changed. I hung up. My hands were shaking with rage. Within hours, the family pressure campaign began. My dad called, his voice cold and disappointed. Your mother is heartbroken. We raised you better than this. My aunt texted, Family helps family, Willa. Don't let pride get in the way. My uncle left a voicemail. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the people we love. Even my grandmother got involved, sending a handwritten card about sharing our blessings and remembering where we came from. The most infuriating part? None of them asked how I was doing. None of them acknowledged that I'd built this life through years of hard work and sacrifice. They just saw an asset to be liquidated for Serena's benefit. Then came the social media campaign. Someone, I suspect my mother, had been sharing details of my selfishness with extended family. Suddenly, distant relatives were commenting on old photos. Some people forget their roots. Money changes people. Family should come first. I watched my own relatives turn against me on Facebook, painting me as the villain for refusing to bankrupt myself for my sister's poor choices. The breaking point came when my neighbor mentioned seeing my family's drama online. Are you okay? She asked. Some of your relatives are saying pretty harsh things. My private family business had become public entertainment, and I was the designated bad guy. That night, I sat on my balcony with Jasper, looking out at the city lights, and realized something that chilled me to the bone. My family wasn't just asking for money. They were trying to destroy my reputation to get it. This wasn't love. This wasn't even desperation. This was warfare. The email that arrived 2 weeks later didn't just cross a line, it obliterated every boundary I thought existed between family and fraud. The subject line read, Housing Assistance Documentation Request. It looked official, professional, like something from a lawyer's office. My heart started racing before I even opened it. Dear Willa, it began. After careful consideration of Serena's housing situation, we believe the most effective solution would be for you to consider transferring temporary ownership of your Charlotte property to her name. This would allow her to qualify for state housing assistance programs while maintaining the property within the family. I had to read it twice. My own parents had sent me a formal request to sign over my condo to my sister. They'd researched housing assistance fraud and were asking me to participate. The email continued with legal-sounding language about temporary transfers and family trusts and mutual benefit arrangements. They'd clearly spent time crafting this, maybe even consulted someone about how to make it sound legitimate. But the most chilling part was the final paragraph. We understand this is a significant request, but we believe it represents the best path forward for everyone involved. Serena gets the stability she needs, you maintain ownership through family channels, and we can all move forward together. They weren't asking anymore. They were presenting this as the logical solution to a problem I'd never agreed was mine to solve. I called my mother immediately. Did you seriously just ask me to commit housing fraud? It's not fraud, Willa. It's family helping family. The property would still be in the family. Mom, what you're describing is illegal and insane. You're being dramatic. People do this kind of thing all the time. No, they don't. And even if they did, I'm not risking my career, my credit, and my freedom so Serena can scam the government. The silence that followed was different from her usual disappointed pauses. This was cold, calculating. I see, she said finally. So you'd rather watch your sister's children suffer than take a small risk to help them. There it was, the final manipulation. Make me responsible for children I didn't create, in a situation I didn't cause, through illegal means I'd never consider. Those aren't my children, Mom, and this isn't a small risk. This is fraud. You've become someone I don't recognize, she said, her voice dripping with disgust. Money has poisoned your heart. She hung up on me. I sat in my kitchen, staring at that email, and felt something break inside me that had been cracking for weeks. This wasn't about helping family anymore. This was about my parents viewing me as a resource to be exploited, not a daughter to be loved. They'd crossed from manipulation into criminal conspiracy, and they expected me to thank them for the opportunity. That was the moment I stopped being their victim and started being their problem. The phone call from my cousin Dahlia 3 months later revealed a betrayal so deep it made everything else look like child's play. Willa, I need to tell you something, Dahlia said, her voice tight with anger. I just got off the phone with your Aunt Linda, and I'm furious. I was making dinner, Jasper at my feet hoping for dropped vegetables. What's wrong? She called to lecture me about that photo I posted of your condo, said I was enabling your selfishness by celebrating your success. My knife stopped mid-chop. What? It gets worse. She told me Serena's been telling everyone that you owe the family for everything they did for you growing up. That your parents sacrificed so much to put you through school, and now you're being ungrateful. The vegetables scattered across my cutting board as my hands started shaking. Willa, They're saying you had a full ride to college because of your dad's connections, that your job was handed to you through family friends, that everything you have, you got because of them. Each lie hit like a physical blow. I'd earned that scholarship through my grades. I'd found my job through online applications and 3 rounds of interviews. My parents had never lifted a finger to help my career. There's more, Dahlia continued. Your mom told Linda that you're making 6 figures now and living in a luxury high-rise, but you won't spare a dime to help your struggling sister and her babies. 6 figures? Luxury high-rise? They were inflating my success to make my refusal seem more heartless, while simultaneously claiming credit for achievements they'd ignored. They're painting you as this cold, selfish daughter who forgot where she came from, and people are believing it because they don't know the real story. I sank into my kitchen chair, phone pressed to my ear, feeling like the world was tilting sideways. Dahlia, none of that is true. You know that, right? Of course I know that. I've watched them ignore you your entire life. But half the family doesn't see what I see. They just hear Serena crying about her kids needing help while her rich sister lives it up in Charlotte. The manipulation was masterful. They'd rewritten history to make themselves the victims and me the villain. Every family gathering I'd missed, every achievement they'd dismissed, every time they'd chosen Serena over me, all of it was being twisted into evidence of my selfishness. I'm so sorry, Willa. I had to tell you because it's not fair. They're destroying your reputation to justify their greed. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen and realized the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just about money anymore. They were systematically turning my entire extended family against me, creating a narrative where I was the bad guy for having boundaries. They'd weaponized my success against me, and they were winning. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated how far I was willing to go to protect myself. The next morning, I did something I'd never imagined I'd need to do. I called a lawyer to protect myself from my own family. I need to make sure my assets are completely untouchable, I told Jennifer Walsh, the estate planning attorney my coworker had recommended. My family is pressuring me to give them money, and I'm worried they might try something legal. Jennifer listened as I explained the housing fraud email, the family pressure campaign, and the character assassination happening behind my scenes. Her expression grew more serious with each detail. Willa, what you're describing sounds like financial abuse. The good news is we can absolutely protect your assets. The bad news is that once we do this, there's no going back. Your family will know you've taken legal steps to keep them away from your money. Good, I said. I want them to know. We spent 3 hours setting up an ironclad defense. First, we placed my condo under a revocable living trust with me as the sole trustee and beneficiary. This made it legally impossible for anyone else to claim ownership or force a sale. Next, we updated my will. My parents had been listed as my beneficiaries since college, a decision I'd made when I thought they actually cared about me. Now, everything would go to animal rescue organizations and educational scholarships for first-generation college students. What about your retirement accounts and life insurance? Jennifer asked. Change those too. I want every dollar going to people who actually deserve it. The final step was setting up a financial power of attorney document that explicitly excluded my family members from ever making decisions about my money, even if I became incapacitated. This is comprehensive protection, Jennifer said as we finished. No one can touch your assets, claim ownership of your property, or make financial decisions on your behalf. You're completely insulated. Walking out of that law office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was in control. My family had spent weeks trying to manipulate, guilt, and pressure me into giving them what they wanted. They'd lied about me, turned relatives against me, and even suggested I commit fraud. But they'd forgotten one important thing. I wasn't the same pushover they'd raised. I was a successful woman with resources, intelligence, and the will to use both. The war they'd started was about to end very differently than they'd planned. The social media post that ended my family's manipulation campaign forever took me 3 days to write, and 30 seconds to destroy their narrative completely. I'd been thinking about it since Dahlia's call. My family was telling lies about me to anyone who would listen, painting me as the villain in their sob story. Meanwhile, I'd been suffering in silence, protecting their reputation while they destroyed mine. That had to stop. I crafted the post carefully, choosing every word to cut through their lies without stooping to their level. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect, honesty, and reciprocity. Real family celebrates your success instead of resenting it. They support your boundaries instead of attacking them. They love you for who you are, not what you can provide. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who mistake your success for their entitlement. Peace isn't always quiet. Sometimes it's the sound of a door closing on toxicity. I posted it at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, then put my phone on silent and went to bed. By morning, my notifications had exploded. The post had been shared hundreds of times. Comments poured in from friends, co-workers, and even strangers who connected with the message. People were sharing their own stories of family manipulation, financial abuse, and the courage it took to set boundaries. This hit me so hard. My brother tried the same thing. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel but can't express. Family trauma is real. Good for you for choosing yourself. But the comment that mattered most came from my neighbor. I've watched you build this beautiful life with such grace. Anyone who can't celebrate that doesn't deserve you. My phone started ringing at 9 a.m. My mother's name flashed on the screen. "How dare you air our family business online?" she screamed before I could even say hello. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "You've been airing our business for months, Mom. You just didn't expect me to tell my side. Take it down. Right now." "No." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "You've become a stranger to me," she said finally, her voice cold as ice. "I don't know who you are anymore." "Good," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded, "because the person you knew was a doormat. And she doesn't live here anymore. Don't expect us to be here when you come crawling back." "I won't be crawling anywhere, Mom. You ignored me for years when I needed you. Now you can ignore me again." I hung up and blocked her number. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself over their comfort, and it felt incredible. 1 year later, my life looked so different that sometimes I barely recognized myself, and I loved every single change. The promotion I'd been working toward finally came through, along with a leadership role that had me traveling internationally for client meetings. I'd been to London, Toronto, and Amsterdam in the past 6 months, representing our company at tech conferences and building partnerships I'd only dreamed about. My condo had become the gathering place for my friend group. We hosted monthly dinner parties, book club meetings, and holiday celebrations that actually felt joyful instead of obligatory. Jasper had become the neighborhood favorite, with 3 different dog-walking friends who spoiled him when I traveled. I'd also started volunteering with a women's empowerment nonprofit, helping other women navigate career transitions and build financial independence. Sharing my story, the sanitized version, had connected me with dozens of women who'd faced similar family pressure to sacrifice their success for others' comfort. The most surprising change was how I felt about my achievements. For years, I downplayed my success, afraid it would make others uncomfortable. Now I celebrated every win openly. New client? I posted about it. Work trip to Europe? I shared photos. Promotion? I threw myself a party. I was learning to be proud of myself without guilt, and it was revolutionary. Meanwhile, the updates I received through Dahlia painted a grim picture back home. My father's business never recovered. My parents had to sell their house and move into a smaller rental. Serena was still struggling, now with 3 kids and no stable income. But here's what surprised me most. I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt sad for them, but not responsible. Their problems weren't mine to solve, and their choices weren't mine to fix. I'd finally learned the difference between love and obligation, and that difference had set me free. The small package that arrived 18 months after I'd cut contact contained something I never expected, an apology that actually meant something. I almost threw it away without opening it. The return address showed my childhood home, and I'd trained myself not to engage with anything from my family. But something about the careful handwriting made me pause. Inside was an old family photo from my high school graduation, one of the few times we'd all looked genuinely happy together. I was wearing my cap and gown, holding my valedictorian medal, surrounded by my parents and Serena. We looked like a normal, proud family. Underneath the photo was a handwritten letter from my mother. Her usually perfect penmanship was shaky, uncertain. Willa, I've been staring at this photo for months, trying to remember the last time I felt proud of you instead of threatened by you. I think it was this day, before I let fear and jealousy poison everything. Your father and I have been in counseling since Christmas. Not marriage counseling, family counseling. We finally admitted that we failed you as parents. We turned your sister into our project and you into our afterthought. We measured love by crisis instead of celebrating stability. When you succeeded, it highlighted our failures with Serena. Instead of being proud, we felt guilty. Instead of celebrating you, we resented you. We asked you to fix problems we created, then called you selfish when you refused. I know this letter doesn't undo 28 years of damage. I know you probably don't trust us anymore, and I understand why. But I needed you to know that we finally see what we did. We lost our daughter because we never learned how to love her properly. You were right to walk away. You were right to protect yourself. You were right about everything. I hope someday you can forgive us. But I understand if you can't. We don't deserve it. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. I should have said that every day of your life. Love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of relief. For the first time in my life, my mother had seen me clearly, not as an asset or a disappointment, but as a person who deserved better. The apology didn't erase the pain, but it validated everything I'd felt. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't wrong to demand respect. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't call her back, didn't send a response. I wasn't ready for that conversation yet, and maybe I never would be. But for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something other than anger toward my family. I felt peace. 6 months after my mother's letter, my sister called with a confession that changed everything I thought I knew about our family's betrayal. Willa, Serena's voice was different, quieter, more mature than I had ever heard it. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something important. I almost hung up. I'd been doing so well, building my new life without the constant drama. But something in her tone made me stay on the line. I've been in therapy for 8 months now, she continued. Real therapy, not the life coaching Mom and Dad used to pay for. And I've learned some things about our family that I need to share with you. She took a shaky breath. Everything that happened with the money, with asking you to sell your condo, that wasn't my idea. Mom and Dad came up with that plan. They told me you were selfish and disconnected, that you'd forgotten about family. They convinced me that asking for $39,000 was reasonable because you were rolling in money. My grip tightened on the phone. They coached me on what to say, how to make it sound like a temporary loan. When you said no, they told me to try harder, to make you feel guilty about the kids. They said you needed to learn that family comes first. The manipulation had been even deeper than I'd realized. They'd used Serena as their weapon, knowing I'd be more likely to help her than them directly. But here's the worst part, Willa. When you posted that thing on social media about family being defined by respect, Mom called me crying, saying you'd humiliated the whole family. She wanted me to comment something mean, to publicly shame you into taking it down. Did you? No. Because for the first time, I actually read what you wrote, really read it. And I realized you were talking about me, too. I'd been treating you the same way they did, like you existed to solve my problems. The silence stretched between us. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness, Serena said finally. I know I don't deserve it. I'm calling because you were right about everything. Our parents are toxic. The way we were raised was toxic, and I'm sorry it took me losing everything to see it. She paused, and I could hear her crying. You were the only one in our family who had her life together, and instead of learning from you, we tried to tear you down. We punished you for being successful because it made us feel like failures. Serena! I'm proud of you, she interrupted. I should have said that years ago. You built something beautiful, and you were smart enough to protect it from us. I wish I'd been brave enough to do the same thing. For the first time in our lives, my sister saw me as a person instead of a resource, and somehow that meant everything. 2 years after walking away from my family, I finally understood that the best revenge isn't what you do to people who hurt you. It's what you do for yourself when they're no longer in your way. I was sitting on my balcony on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, watching Jasper chase butterflies in the small garden I'd created. The Charlotte skyline stretched out before me, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from my coworker Sarah. Saw the promotion announcement. VP of Client Relations at 30. You're incredible. The promotion had been announced Friday. 3 years ago, I would have immediately called my parents to share the news, desperate for their approval. Now, I celebrated with people who actually cared about my success. That evening, I hosted a dinner party for 8 friends, my chosen family. We laughed until our stomachs hurt, shared stories about our weeks, and made plans for a group trip to Ireland next spring. These people knew my whole story and loved me anyway. They celebrated my wins without jealousy and supported me through challenges without judgment. As I cleaned up afterward, I thought about my biological family. According to Dahlia, my parents were still struggling financially. Serena was working 2 part-time jobs and slowly rebuilding her life through therapy. They'd all learned hard lessons about consequences and accountability. But here's what surprised me most. I didn't feel vindicated or satisfied by their struggles. I felt nothing. They'd become strangers whose choices no longer affected my happiness. My revenge hadn't been dramatic or calculated. I hadn't destroyed their lives or exposed their secrets. I'd simply chosen myself over their dysfunction, and that choice had transformed everything. I'd built a career I loved, friendships that nourished me, and a home that felt like sanctuary. I'd learned to celebrate my achievements without guilt and set boundaries without apology. I'd discovered that family isn't about shared DNA, it's about shared respect, love, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Standing in my kitchen that night, Jasper at my feet hoping for dropped crumbs, I smiled at how far I'd come. The scared, invisible daughter who'd left home 3 years ago was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth and refused to accept less than she deserved. My greatest revenge wasn't payback. It was peace. It was choosing myself after a lifetime of being chosen last. It was building a life so beautiful that losing toxic people felt like winning. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. Thousands of people are breaking free from toxic family dynamics every day. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of survivors who chose themselves over dysfunction. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we all need permission to walk away from people who don't deserve us. What's your story of choosing yourself? Drop it in the comments below.